I would like to invite the first panel, who's gonna challenge you, excite you, and inspire you. Fern, over to you.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Fern. I currently work for one of the portcos of SC Ventures. So I'm not going to talk too much. Please, ladies and gentlemen, could you give me a round of applause and welcome my fellow panelists for panel 1. We have Siawen here. Shall we? Yeah, let's take a seat. Charu. It is actually. Can we have Craig, Utsa? And let's just keep this very informal. Let's take a seat. Very nice. Female, male, female, male, female, male. Very, very well organized. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to panel 1. Today we're going to talk about building the road to gender equity. Now, before I jump straight into the content, I'm very glad to be the moderator of today, right? And I usually like to have a good sense of what's happening in the room. So to quote, so what I'm going to do is this, okay, sorry, I'm laughing at my own joke. I haven't even started my joke. So I would like to have a sense of the room. So I would like to do a vLookUp of the room. So who here is from SMU? Very nice, these are the entrepreneurs. Who here is from an organization or an institution? Or a partner, yeah. Okay, and then who here is for the free food? There you go! Right, I like honest people. Right, okay, so I've warmed up the room already, so welcome very much to the panel today. We've got a great panel today. We've got very, very established, very, very distinguished guests. I've been very informal, you know, that's because I'm going to let them do their self-intros. So, ladies and gentlemen, maybe I'll just throw the floor to you guys. Maybe we'll do one round of self-intros. Xiaowen, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure, thank you. Hey everyone, it's very nice to be here today. So I'm the Global Head of Business Banking for Standard Chartered Bank. I do want to spend a little time to just explain what does business banking do, right? So business banking is our dedicated value proposition to support small and medium enterprises in 18 markets, Asia and Africa. Right, so I've been working in Standard Chartered for 26 years in different roles and also in different geographies. It's very nice meeting you here today.
I don't have quite the same long story. I've only been in Standard Chartered for 2 years. Hi, my name is Craig Courtier. I look after digital and data for CCIB, our corporate investment bank. And I'm very privileged to lead a very talented team of women and men who are helping us to reimagine how corporate banking should be taken to our customers. So great to be here today, and I hope we can have an interesting. What do we have? Inspire, motivate. What was the other one?
It was an exciting.
Insight.
Yes.
I was thinking, wow, that's quite a big brief. It's great to be here today.
Hi, I'm Charu. So I'm based in Singapore. I am a managing partner for IBM Consulting Strategic Partnership Business, which is half of our consulting revenues, which gives me the inordinate privilege of working with all leading tech platforms and technology providers, from Salesforce to AWS to SAP, but really leading through on innovative platforms that we create for our clients, right? And I also lead IBM's advisory business for talent, skills, and transformation. So a lot of what we talk about as part of our women agenda is intricately linked to how we're transforming our workforces. And that's really what a lot of CEOs are asking for. And Santosh, much like you, prior to taking on this role, I did ventures for IBM, where we took balance sheet positions in companies or minority investments in companies aligned with our vision. And part of what excites me about today is that part of aligning vision is also about aligning how do we come together as people, not just the balance sheets. And part of what we were looking to always align is, do we speak the same language? Do we have the same sort of people across the table? Because when our clients come to us, they come to us with a really varied demand. Their consumers are different. So when we acquire companies, we want to be able to acquire people who can meet the demands of those consumers. So just wanted to sort of share that with you.
Thank you. My name is Utsav Garg. I manage Alvarez & Marsal, or A&M, in Southeast Asia, Australia. A&M, for those of you who don't know, is a global professional services firm. We specialize in turnaround and restructuring primarily. 35 countries, 77 offices. Prior to Alvarez & Marsal, I led A.D. Carney's business in the region, 24 years of industry and consulting. I'm here to tell you what doesn't work. So I'll have the most failure stories here in terms of gender parity. High value add consulting would probably be the worst ratios. And despite 18 years of trying hard, it's only inched above a certain level. The other perspective I'll bring to the table is, I met my wife in consulting as well, and she was perhaps one of the most talented consultants. And I know what happens if organizations at the right life stages don't do the right things. So the loss organizations face, as well as the upside potentials organizations have. So excited to share a few stories.
All right, so thanks very much for the quick intros. We now actually have a good sense of the different industries that are in, the roles that they play. So this would actually help you craft the questions that you would like to ask, right? So I generally, when I moderate panels, I like to keep it interesting. The more difficult the questions, the better, right? And then I'll have a sense of what the room is like. Everyone's a bit nervous today. Okay, now let's go on to the first question, right? The truth is, we are here to talk about how do we build the road to gender equity. And if I go back to classic innovation theory, right, actually what are we trying to solve, right? So what problem are we here to solve and discuss today? So to me, my question is, on the path to gender equity, what challenges have my panelists here faced personally, such that, you know, when we invited you here, you're like, yes, I definitely want to be here today. Sharon, you want to go ahead?
I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we had a recent client event, right? So we invited some women entrepreneurs to the event. One of the comments actually made by my client was very interesting. She said that in most of the women leadership or entrepreneur panels discussions, there's always a question asked: how do you balance your life, your family, and your business? And she said she wondered whether the same question is asked to men, right? So, I mean, the reality is the social tradition does assign more household responsibilities to women, right? So it becomes a real challenge for women to find a balance without a good support system. And also at the same time, we know that in some of the emerging markets, some of the markets we are in, right? So the local legal system does also prevent women to have titles to properties, to fixed access, right? So that also makes it more difficult for women entrepreneurs, women-led business to access to the traditional financing system, right? So according to IFC, that 68% of the women-led business, small and medium enterprises in the emerging economy has reported that was unmet financing needs, right? So that's what we've seen from business banking supporting the SMEs.
So those are actually very real problems, right? The first point was really about, as a female, right? How do you juggle all these different balls, right? How do you manage work, life, family? Those are real questions and problems. And of course, those who are in developing markets, right? Just the traditional infrastructure and the traditional practices itself, it doesn't help women at all. So very big problems. But I'll move on to, let's say, Craig, for example. Any personal challenges or things that you've seen yourself, and that's why you're here?
So I absolutely think there are three things that I think about. So first, you've got the macro issues, which you've just kind of outlined, which I think are big policy issues that I think we've got global attention on. The second is a mindset issue, and the third is a structural issue. Right? So I come from South Africa. It's probably we're all aware of the kind of racial inequality we had in our country, and how much work our countries had to do to kind of address some of those issues. And that's not only been a racial issue, that's also been a gender issue. There are two things there. One, structurally, if you were, for instance, coming from industries like I came from, which was software engineering, there just simply aren't any female engineers. There aren't any poor designers, because design is a very expensive thing to study, because at the very least you need a Mac, and those are not accessible. And so when you start to kind of understand the structural issues in the problem, you can go right back into the schools and say, right, if you want to change the ultimate outcome, you have to have a long-term view. You have to think about things in 5 and 10 and 15-year quantums, because you can do things now which mean that the amount of diverse talent that's arriving in the marketplace in 10 years will be there and might not solve your immediate problem. And the third is a mindset issue. If you're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again as leaders, okay, you're not going to get a different outcome. So simple things like when you're recruiting, what I keep, you sit down and you're recruiting for a new head of, and then there'd be 7 white males. Those are the CVs. And there was no effort even at the kind of mindset issue to kind of look for diversity in the panel of who you're hiring. And so I think if you can understand those 3 things, and certainly my experience has been understand what you can do to influence those 3 domains, you can move the needle much more significantly, because some things you can just do. You can just do. You can change people's mindsets, you can challenge people more fundamentally, and the other 2 I think are a lot longer. And so in my opinion, my experience is do the things you can do very, very actively, and you'll see things change, and then influence where you can on the bigger issues.
So that's brilliant, right? Because what you've done is you've helped all of us, right? You've categorized the problems, and you've given us solutions immediately already. So thanks very much, actually. So let's move on to Charu. Any personal challenges that you want to share? Personal stories are fine. Industry stories are fine. Over to you.
Yeah, I'll share a personal story because this is one that I've shared with some of you before. So indulge me. Professional services does have a bad reputation for having just fewer women, and we get fewer women at the start of their careers, and those women just become rarer and rarer as you go up the pyramid. So when you become a managing partner, you look to the left or right, there are very few of you sitting at the very top. Now, I had a story where, I think this was just pre-COVID or just during COVID, I was traveling with a male colleague who was also a partner, and just as you do, you take the flight back. We shared a cab back to the airport together. And in the cab, I had my headphones on, we were just on a call, he was on a call, I was on a call, but we were still sort of sharing that ride back home. We were in Jakarta, so it takes you 2 hours to get to the airport. We have the call going on for all those 2 hours. So we get to the airport, I finally take off my headphones, and he looks at me and says, and he literally had a look on, which I thought is really weird. And he says to me, gosh, how do you do it? Doesn't your poor husband suffer because of all of the talking that you have to do and the flights you've got to take? Mind you, this is a man who works right next to me at work, manages a similar portfolio, if not less. And I turned around and said to him, you're traveling on the same flight back. You took the same flight with me 2 mornings ago. You've talked for the same amount of hours that I did. How does your wife suffer you? And I'm still friends with him.
That's what you think.
I don't need to know. But I think therein lies the problem for us, right? And the problem is that when we talk about gender equity, when we talk about getting more women in the workforce, when we talk about programs, programmatically changing what we need to do in the industry, a large amount of that responsibility also lies on women. Committees of women, DEI committees are chaired by women. In diversity groups have more women than men. The head of a diversity board will have a woman who's a leader. And my point has always been that the behaviors you're trying to change, and these little microaggressions, these little mindsets, as you pointed out, these little ways of thinking about women at the workplace, fundamentally have to change, not for us, but for the people we need to work with, right? And therefore, it's really important that we do things that include men, or give the responsibility to men to shoulder a lot of these initiatives, right? And therefore, this personal story always makes me think that the role of allies is not one that comes on bullet number 4 in a PowerPoint presentation. The role of allies is front and top. because they own the transformation of workspaces just as much as we owe ourselves to get to the top, right? So I thought that story will stay with me forever.
It would actually stay with me forever, actually, because
Correct.
it's hit a raw note.
Correct. And then
actually,
the
yeah.
other thing I'll leave you with, because somebody said this to me recently, and since then I haven't stopped thinking about it. After a meeting finishes in a conference room, who are the people who lean in to pick up the dirty cups or those, think about it. Think about the last meeting. It's almost invariably women. When is the last time your colleague, who's a man, who's reached out to sort of pick up those dirty cups? Because a lot of us in self-service offices, right? And to me, that's symptomatic of gender behaviors and stereotypes that we've laddered on ourselves. So it's equally not an ally question, it's equally, why do we reach out to remove that cup? I want to get things out of the way. But we shouldn't have to, or we need to distribute responsibilities. So I'm a really big call out to people on allies, a really shout out to allies, because they need to be part of this journey.
That was a very, very passionate sharing. I really, really like that. I did a scan of the room for you. All of them picked up the cup, so you don't have to worry. So what's up? Over to you now. Any personal
I was
challenges?
so engrossed in the story, I forgot mine for a minute. So, thank you for sharing that. Listen, just keeping the same thread of personal story. So I met my wife and we were in consulting. So because you spend so many hours at work, you don't meet people outside. So, and she was a better consultant. So the first promotions, associate to manager, manager to principal, were just for me about just keeping pace with her, right? Like we should because everybody knew we were together. But then a life stage came, which is the first child, and that's when things change. Suddenly, it changes. Everything changes, and this was one of the smartest people, and our organization this was like a few years, this was 12 years back, so we didn't have a maternity room, we didn't have a single partner, right? So there was no case study, there was no precedent for people to look at that, and it was just the lack of ignorance and knowledge, and due to a variety of factors, then she was the one who decided to leave consulting, right? It was bad news for industry overall. But and then I decided to stay on, right? And there are so many things that happen now for two people who are at the top of their careers, how the world balances it out. So if you're in an international school, all the things will happen during weekdays when two people are working, right? And the moms are supposed to be attending, right? So how does that work? And if, for example, if she's a senior executive in Unilever, so if spouses are being invited and I attended, I'm the only male spouse attending. So it's the things are not structurally made for those sort of situations. People don't expect like the move. There's a promotion move to London. Why can't your husband move? Because actually, there is at that level, it'll be whatever, male or female, only one person working. That's the usual precedent. So no, he cannot move. So I think we need to, now we are reaching a situation where there's really so many new cases, new precedents that will be there. And there, the role of allies, the role of sponsors, the role of somebody senior who's actively, sensitively, proactively thinking about these things and coming out with creative, bespoke solutions. Listen, this can be done. I can make it happen. This is what we'll do. I think because all the policies and procedures cannot build for those things that will be required in individual cases, which will be all unique and all differentiated. So I think that's the most important thing.
So bravo to you, right? For being the ally.
I'm a great +1.
For actively going out and sharing that, if the kids have a soccer match, that daddy can be there too.
I won't claim that I'll be attending everything, but.
So I think it's great, right? Because I think we've got a very nice range of problems that we've seen across different sectors, right? That's quite important. And then maybe I just want to jump to the next question, which is, we've heard of all of these problems, right? But let's talk about solutions, right? Have you seen any initiatives or programs within your own organization to help support women? Maybe Sewan? Yeah.
Yes, I think we talk about the support system, right? So in Standard Chartered, I thought a few things we could pull out, right? One is we just been the first organization in this region to have this paternity leave for men, right? So the men can enjoy, I think 16 weeks,
20
yeah,
weeks.
20 weeks,
20 weeks.
yeah, paternity leave, right? So to be able to share the household responsibility when a new baby is born, right? So that was a great initiative. And also I think another one is probably I would call out about flexi work arrangement, right? So that gives the women the flexibility to take that balance. And also I felt like it was great story shared, right? So for women, we are saying that if you want to really have a great balance between the work and life or the business and the family, is to find a strong support system. I think the first thing first, to find the right husband.
That is true, right? Okay, I don't know whether there are any students here, I'm not going to call anyone out. But someone did tell me, right, if there's only one decision you make in life, it better be to marry right.
Yes.
And I think that's right, yeah.
So
Oh, Craig, you need to say something.
Yeah. There's a good joke about marrying the wrong person and being complete or finished. And if you marry the right person, you're complete, and if you marry the wrong person, you're finished. Complete and finished mean the same thing, right? So let's talk about something I think is really important. You talked about programs. So let's talk about compensation. Okay, so in almost every business I've ever worked in, the gap between male and female comp was big. In some cases, dramatically bigger than 20, 25, 30, 40% for the same role, right? And so I never really got that. I came from a family, I have 3 daughters myself, and I came from a family where anyone who ever did anything for you was sir or ma'am, and you treated everybody with equal amounts of respect, and never helped you if you spoke out of turn to my mother, because my father would deal with you. And so I always had right from very early, I had a very ingrained sense of equality. But the one thing I could never understand, and I can never understand, is why there's such big differences in comp. And so in every role, and in every leadership role I've ever been, it's the first place I've gone, and I fixed that, right? And that's what I talk about when I say mindset, is fix that. Fix that for your people. That's being an ally. That's addressing a big structural inequality in most businesses. And you get told by finance, oh, you can't do it. Oh, you can't do that. It's going to cost your salary bill's going to go up 10%, or 20, or 30%. I say, nonsense. That's a mindset issue. And so I think, luckily where I come from, we're inside of the bank, we don't have such big structural inequalities. But I bet you if you look around in some of the industries you've worked in and some of the places you've been, you'll see that. And so for me, some of the things you talked about being practical, fix that. If you're a leader today, fix that in your organization. And if you're a woman leader in the organization, fix that. If you're a man, fix that, right? Because that's the first step into kind of removing the mental differences between what men and women do in the workplace and whether you value them the same. Okay, you talked about men and removing the microaggressions. One of the challenges that I have with most of the guys that work for me is I need you to think more like a woman, right? And they all get confused. What does that mean? I said, usually listen more. Okay, listen more. Stay in the problem longer so that you understand as opposed to jump to the solution. So I think that there's lots of practical things, but if there's one thing that I do in every job I've ever been in every place I've ever been in, is fix the comp inequality first.
Good job. So all the ladies here tomorrow, you can go back to your office and asking for a pay rise.
Well, there's some
Craig, you can quote Craig.
Well, there's some. There are a few people that work with me at Stanchart. I think the 2, 3. Hopefully that will resonate with you and you'd agree with that, right? Is you wouldn't see a big gap or any gap between what you and your.
Are you hiring?
The bank is never hiring. It's one of those.
Jerry, over to you. Any special or innovative approaches you've seen thus far?
Yeah, I'm going to talk from experience of IBM, right? And I chair the D&I committee at an APAC level, and it's sponsored by our general manager for Asia Pacific, right? So it's a serious business for us. It's not something, first of all, it's not something we do in our pastime. It's not something you do on a Friday evening when you've got 30 minutes to go, right? So the first thing for me is it has to start from the top and it has to be programmatic. So the first things, and the important things are the boring things. It's part of our scorecard. So if you're a geo leader, if you're a market leader, if you head you head whatever part of the business, your diversity, the diversity of your team is part of your scorecard, and we track it, and we track it regularly. Secondly, the head of the business pays attention to this, and it's, like I said, it's done every 2 weeks, fortnightly, and it's not done with a diversity team. Every head of business, the line of business leadership is in that poll, talking about why their numbers are up and down, right? And it's a really important call because it gets you a sense of perspective around what's happening in the market. Downstream, it's also linked to your hiring strategy, so it's really important to learn from the heads of business. The third thing is make it measurable. And a lot of times there is this talk about, but diversity is not numbers, but it has to start with numbers. Because if you can't measure it, you can't do anything about it. I was in a conversation with a very large company, very, very large company, whose market cap is pushing several $1 trillion, who said to me that their diversity number is 14%. 14%, take a minute for that to sink. And that's my point. If it's, to your point, 14% means you have a serious problem in the company. And therefore, for us, the number is 50%. We don't aspire to be 50% by 2025, 2030. We aspire to be 50% today. And every single market is tasked to get 50. Now, are we 50? Maybe not. Are we inching close to 50? Yes. And there are good days and bad days. We lose people. And therefore, every single hiring and recruitment request, I think one of you mentioned this, if there are no women candidates on the slate, we shut down the job slate. We shut it down. You don't hire if you cannot get a sensible woman candidate. And that basically means, and I think part of what Kanchana was trying to do with the platform is also making sure that you've got platforms where you can have community of people that you can hire from, right? That was the other thing. The fifth thing is, this is not just about numbers, it's about also psychological safety. So when we're putting in place policies and how we change things, it's about actually talking to our women on the ground. Psychological safety in many parts is very hard to grasp. If you go down to mining towns in Perth, if you go up to Korea, if you talk to our delivery centers in India, I can tell you that not just for our company, but across the board, there will be aggressions, there will be microaggressions, and there will be ways of working, because people don't know any better. And one, you brought up the child care. It's a very small proportion of what our expense, but providing childcare facilities at work suddenly gets women back into work. And we're actively driving that in places like India where we don't otherwise get women back to work, right? So psychological safety is really important, and the only way you do that is making sure your top leadership has the time to talk to women at different parts of the career ladder, right? And programs have to be different for women in different parts of their careers. We've seen that women who are early in their careers want a lot more coaching. They want a lot more purpose in life. They just don't want to be responsible for just doing work. They want to be able to link up with, exciting companies, purpose outside of a company. So we need to give them that. Women in the middle, by the way, we lose all our women in the middle. This hollowing out of the middle is a problem that we've seen across the globe. This is a global phenomenon. We're losing women to startups. We're losing women who just want to find better purpose than working in a 9-to-5 job. The 9-to-5 job doesn't exist. So in order to get to that women in the middle, you have to give them a firm path to get to the top and support them, which means they need more sponsorship, they need allies, they need programmatic ways of establishing their eminence in the market. So it's not what you are in the company, it's what you are outside the company. So how do we put capital on you so that you then become, highly regarded in the market? And then we come to our senior women. Our senior women want to get on boards. Our senior women want to have a career beyond the company. How do we give them a longer term vision on career? How do we get them into leadership positions? How do we give them that career and succession path? So the other bit is designing programs and learning and knowledge at different stages of women's life. It's really critical for us. So, and we're doing it programmatically. Does it take time? Yes. Does it take money? Yes. Can it be avoided? No. Right? So I just genuinely think that these are things all companies do. Companies that have done it well are the ones who take time out. And this is coming top down.
So I love it, right? So Charles has shared like so many solutions, and I'll just share a few, right? So you talked about, what gets measured gets done, right? Simple things like giving the staff psychological safety, just having something simple. Have a childcare center downstairs, right, in the office, and it just gives them that sense of availability and flexibility. You also talked about tracking numbers, right, and making sure that you're hiring. So a lot of solutions and a lot of tips from Charu. So she's dressed in a very nice bright blue dress. After the panel session, you can actually approach her for more.
Miss me in the blue dress.
For more discussions, right? So I haven't forgotten you. It's
No, I
so-
forgot.
you forgot.
It's
So
a hard act to follow, right?
yeah. So any innovative approaches that you've seen in the various. You're in consulting, right? So you would have seen many different practices.
So I think, listen, I'll just pick on some examples to make it real, right? Because I think conceptual framework is all covered. So 3 examples, right? Recruiting, promoting, retaining, right? So recruiting, we gave I think a metric that 50% of entry level have to be women, right? That should be simple. Forget the laterals, entry should be women. Because when you look at students, there are more students or equal number of students, then our HR person cannot. So then because we have a 4.5, when you go, we are a little bit academic, so 4.5, but actually we did the study, there are more women above 4.5 than men. So there's really no reason. But the application ratios are not the same because we were sending a lot of men to our campus presentations. So then we said, okay, we'll have more women to the campus presentations. So then we said, okay, women are not asking enough questions. So we'll do only women-only event at the NTU. So this year is the first year when we did only women event at the NTU and massive turnout. Only women presenting and only women attending. And that was our best event in many years. So now at least applications have gone to 50. Then you have to interviews. The same thing you have to do in interviews because all these, despite best of intentions, however great sponsor or whatever, there are subconscious biases. So you have to, at every stage, you have to just make sure that it is, when you commit to 50%, it is commit to 50%, and people don't see that as an excuse to lower the bar in any way. In fact, you are actually increasing the bar, you're increasing the retention rate, you're increasing the engagement rate. So that's one example. Another one is promotions, right? We just had today our performance evaluation meeting. What happens is a bunch of partners and performance council sits, every candidate name comes up, and then you say, great person, promote, or no, 2, 3, 4 calibrations, all this happens. What makes the difference? Who's banging the desk for you? When your name comes up, who's the person, who's the senior person who says, no, I have worked with her or him, this is happening, this is the reason why. You can have all the evaluation forms, you can have all the objectivity. Ultimately, it comes down to who's banging the table for you. So what we did, first we had a lot of women mentors for women consultants, but women mentors were probably not banging the table hard enough. So we made sure that apart from mentors, we have now sponsors. So 25 top quartile of all our women have an MD sponsor. So in MDs, and sponsor is different from a mentor. So mentor is objective, coaching, Sponsors is unabashed advocate. So they will focus on the positive. They will really push the candidate hard. And when the candidate says, no, I don't think I'm ready, I can take another 6 months for promotion. I'm like, why? Bullshit, right? You are ready now, I can see it in you. A sponsor is somebody that can see has more belief in you than you have in yourself, right? So and a full sponsorship training to make it happen, right? That's second example. Third one, this is an interesting story. So we are going to enter a new office 7th of November. And then one of our partners comes and says, listen, I'll have an all-women all-women committee for the new office design. Great, let's do this. So they come up with a design and they say, we need a maternity room in our office. It's like, great news, who's pregnant? No, nobody. And that's exactly the reason why you need one, right? And it's a great, wow, yeah. It's like a step of faith. you know, it's a small. You might like Standard Chartered and all are very big companies. We are very small. You know, you're trying to, every room counts, every space counts, and it's a step of faith. And you say, yeah, wow, like just so it's out there. It's a maternity room, and it might not be used, but it's there, and it's that symbolic value of that. You know, it's like it's waiting, right? So I think just some examples.
And the thing is, what I like is, again, we're very solutions driven. This panel is actually very solutions driven, right? Off the top of my head, I think we've rattled down 20 different solutions that are easily applicable and you can be executed, right? So I quite like that. But I also figured that it's not fun, you know, if it's just us talking, right? And I was just wondering, should we just open the session to the floor for questions? See, I knew it. There's one hand up already. Can we have the mic over to the lady, please?
There's an extra mic.
Hello. Hi. Thank you. That was probably one of the best panels I've sat through, so thank you so much. It was really interesting, especially listening to some of the solutions. And I work at SCB, all cards on the table, and I do a lot of work with D&I, all cards on the table. But there is a but. A lot of our solutions are treating the symptoms. So the cause of why we have this problem in the first place, I'm really curious to understand from the panel, what are businesses and organizations' responsibility to dealing with the unconscious bias? So when we are parenting our children, when we're being relatives and friends, when we're gifting presents to little boys and little girls, when we're thinking about the societal norms of the fact that my 2 daughters are given dolls, but my friend Julia's 2 sons are often gifted cars. What can organizations do more of, so that it's not just about trying to solve a problem in an organization, but solve the problem before it becomes a problem?
I'll share some from us. Do you want to go first?
Maybe Utsam go first.
Yeah.
I must admit, I am by no measure a gender equity expert. Like, I'm not top 10 specialties. You know, but I would say what we do well is consult experts, right? So I think getting talks, right? Getting a lot of experts in different areas and get them to talk to people not only as professionals but as personals. So start women's leader series. We said we don't have enough role models, so we'll get them from outside. I was just thinking when this discussion was opening, I know who to invite for my next women's leader series. So I think, and for all these things, there are a lot of experts out there. So I cannot sit here and give you a solution to like change like the world global issue in gender equity. But what we can do is make sure that we have the right people coming in and allowing access to all our employees to those right experts.
I think what I'll add onto that is we can't change how people are structured, but we can change the time that they have with us, right?
We can change the time that they have with us. One of the things we actively invest in is experiential learning. So, you know, the old diversity learning where you do mandatory learning in a bunch of slides, the days of that are gone. So a lot of it has to be role-based. I think you said, how do you put yourself in the shoes of a woman to think like a woman? A lot of this has to be role-based learning. You have to invest in learning where you're calling people and getting them to spend a day in your shoes. We do a lot of this at senior leadership levels where we invite a very senior partner to spend a day pairing off with a woman, but in her shoes. So you then go off thinking, what did she go through that I've learned? So that's one. And I think the second thing is, and I said, it's about putting social capital on women and exposing them as role models. Because a lot of what we don't have is role modeling happening at senior levels, even to our own children. So if you can invest in putting your senior women as role models out there, I think that fundamentally changes the face of a 9-to-5 male-dominated workplace. I mean, and especially in technology where I work, the more people you surface who are women, it changes the narrative. So I mean, I think we can do 2 or 3 of those things, but really you just have to make sure that people are learning how to behave at work. And also, what was the right way to work at, behave at work is also changing. I mean, it's not just a man-woman conversation. Now it's expanded to a broader conversation about gender, about sexual orientation, also about neurodiversity. I mean, we find ourselves working with a lot of smart people who are on the spectrum. And our promotion processes, our HR processes are not built to deal with people on the spectrum, right? And therefore, we find ourselves rewriting some of those. Our ways of evaluating are changing when we're dealing with people who may be very diverse from us in the way they think, right? So I think some of this is also new. And to your point, we need to be able to create policies which are flexible enough to change with the needs of time.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, a lot has been said. If I were to just reflect on what we did in Standard Chartered Bank, right? So you probably heard from Alex mention from the beginning, right? So why we're doing this? Because we believe in it. Having for example, Standard Chartered committed to have a certain percentage. We have, I think, 49% of women on the board, because we believe that having a diverse board with different perspectives, they can actually make better decisions, right? So I think believing that, and then that one becomes a top-down messages, because we believe that is going to, companies with diversity will perform better. And also from that point of view, you have the top-down measures and KPI, and then stick to it. I think that's one. Second thing also, I do want to, as someone mentioned about unconscious bias, right? So we all grown up with different background, different educational background, different social background, different culture background. And so I think one of the things we did was really to go through that learning to discover your unconscious bias. And that actually makes a huge difference. That's to address from the culture perspective, how do you address that? And then I think thirdly is really, if you want to change a word, you have to start somewhere. I thought that all the companies, what the big companies are doing and small companies doing, and is to bring that awareness. Bring that awareness, and we start from a small change, and that will become a trend, and it become a big force going forward. That's.
So what I take away is it all starts with ourselves, right? We can preach, right? But we can start with ourselves as role models, right? So I've got a signal that tells me that I've got 1 minute left, probably now 30 seconds left. I just have a question. Does anyone have any other questions? Oh, one question. I'm gonna break the rules. Oh, 2 questions, 3 questions, 4 questions. We're not gonna go home tonight. Okay, I'm gonna spend just one question, just time for one more question, right? And then Harold, you can cut short our panel later. But maybe just one more question, please.
Hi, I'm Khadija. I'm the founder of Moxie. I guess, so thank you for a great panel. And I think there was a lot that was shared about the leaky pipeline and, great solutions as well that the organizations are working on. I guess my question is, how do you go about diagnosing even, like when you take a step back, how do you go about diagnosing what are the key issues in the organization within that leaky pipeline that you're crafting those solutions for, and are you happy with the way that you're diagnosing those issues?
Maybe just one panelist to answer the question. Craig?
Yeah, so I want to say 2 things quickly. Just quickly, you talked about, and I think it's worth addressing, you talked about little boys getting cars and little girls getting dolls. Diversity is not homogeneity. We don't want everybody to think the same. Okay, we need to get to a place where women don't need to behave like men in the workplace in order to get ahead, right? And that we celebrate the differences between us, and in the differences is our strength. And so I don't think it's about addressing who we are fundamentally, trying to make us all the same. It's about understanding that in the diversity is the strength, and how do we include. And so I just wanted to raise that, because otherwise we all end up thinking the same again. It starts with data, and I think, you spoke about it. You've got to measure it. You've got to reward it or penalize it. You've got to put it on people's scorecards. You've got to put it at the top of the agenda. It has to come from the top of the house, and people have to care about it. And if you need to affect their pay packet in order for them to care about it, start there, right? But you have to have the data, because if you don't fundamentally understand that out of a population of 100 people, 70 are men and 30 are women, you've got a problem. And so you've got to start fundamentally with the data. And I think if you get there and you start understanding your analytics better, that gives you a baseline to start addressing the trends that the data will show you. And on the back of that, I think you can introduce the right interventions. You said, are we happy with that? I don't think it's a one and done. I don't think that any program that you put down is going to solve a problem without that problem moving. And I think the homework question changes all the time. Right? You've got societal macro factors driving new understanding, as our definitions of gender and sexuality have changed dramatically in the 30 years that I've been working. If we looked at the policies then, the homework question that we had to answer 30 years ago, it's not even a question anymore, right? So I think start with analytics in your own organization, get a baseline for that, and then revisit the thing. I mean, talk about the senior leaders at IBM looking at this problem every 2 weeks. That you're talking about very expensive, complex rooms addressing a very complex issue at a high frequency, and I think that's what it takes. You have to get that serious about it. And if it doesn't come from the top of the house and it's not embodied by the CEO and the board and the chairman of the bank, of any business, it won't fundamentally shift.
All right, thanks, Greg. And I think that's the end of panel 1. By far, one of the best panels we've had tackling such a complex issue. I know we could have spent another 30 minutes more, but on behalf of the panel here, on behalf of the organizing committee, I just want to say thank you so much for spending so much time with us. I think we are moving on to the next segment, so please could I ask everyone to please give them a round of applause. All right, thank you, panelists. You know how they look like. You can go look for them after this.